Start recording. Thank you to whomever did that. Um, Great. So it looks like we're recording, and it looks like I'm still sharing my screen. Is that true?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
sweet. Okay, great. So the agenda for today, this is the AI show and tell. Very exciting. Um, the first agenda item is hello. Hi. Thank you for being here, everybody. Um, I wanted to just make some space for announcements and requests. Basically, if anybody here has an announcement they'd like to make or a request that they'd like to make, maybe you're looking for a job or you're looking for a coworker, or you're looking for answer to a question about documentation that you think we could help to answer, I could open the floor for that. The floor is open. Or if you think of something later, um, you could ask later too, because I've added that at the end as well, just to follow back up on announcements or requests. So feel free to speak up if something has come to mind. Um, One announcement I would like to make, I guess really kind of a couple, um, which you can see here. So our friends at Portland State University TechCom program, they have a couple of events coming up. So one is the hands-on open source documentation workshop with Mike Jang, who you probably all know uh, in some way. So he is working at Nginx. I think I'm saying it right. And he is going to bring everyone who shows up to this event through the process of contributing to his documentation, to the overall documentation repository. It's in a Docs as code environment, but you do not need to know Git in order to contribute. So that's a really cool opportunity to get involved. And I'm going to copy paste both the announcements and the good first issues for that. That's going in the chat. Um, so if you're interested, that's a really just great spot to learn and get involved in that project. And then another announcement I have is just something else PSU TechCom is doing. This is content management and SEO. I'm pasting that into the chat as well. Um, you can go to those announcements and read more detail about who's presenting and what they'll be talking about. But it's just a great we got some folks in the waiting room. Uh, a great way to kind of keep these ideas, at the surface for things that you're thinking about and working on. Definitely apply in some way to a lot of this stuff. So that would be one announcement. Oh, another announcement is just the Write the Docs conference, May 4th. Um, so um, hardly, it's just me and David on screen, which is totally fine. So I'll just do a show of hands for who's going to the conference. There's at least one person. I'll be there. Yeah. Oh, David is going to be there too. Very cool. So maybe David, maybe we can get some free. Oh, Michelle will be there. That's great. Maybe we can all meet up and get some free pastries from the pastry table. That would be pretty great. So yeah, May 4th through 6th. The link. I'll throw into the chat as well. If you're not familiar, you can just read more about it. It's just such a fantastic space and opportunity to be with your fellow documentarians. How do I lower my hand? I'm just gonna leave my hand up, I guess, because it can't find the button right now. Um, so yeah,
And
those are
then for the conference, I just want to mention I help run the welcome wagon for the conference. So for anyone who's new to the conference who hasn't been before, me and some people on my team all are sit at the registration table. So if anyone here hasn't been and they're thinking about going or they're going for the first time, you can always look out for me. And we always give little tours and help out folks who are newer to the community.
That is fantastic, David. Thank you so much for that. That's great. I remember the Welcome Wagon folks at the previous conferences that I've been to, and they're just so great and so friendly and helpful. So that's wonderful. Thank you so much for doing that. Um, Let's see. So I have gone through these announcements, and I'll circle back later if anybody has any thing that they'd like to add, any announcements or requests or anything like that. And now, we'll get to the meat of tonight's event, which is the AI show and tell. So this show and tell idea came up in conversation with the community. I think even just a few meetups ago, that we kind of batted this idea around and talked about it, and now it's happening. And so thank you so much, all for being here, and for our presenters, for Lynn, Michelle, and Scott, for just gathering their knowledge to share with us. I just think it's so cool, and we're all really better off for it. Um, so yeah, that's about all I have to say. It's really mostly just gratitude. I've talked with everybody, and everybody's okay with any questions you might have, just to kind of keep it conversational. So if you have something in your mind, some question or clarification you're seeking, please feel free to ask, raise your hand, throw it in the chat. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat, and we'll just try to moderate things. So three people, about 20-ish minutes, sort of max. Less is fine too. That's kind of what you can expect of tonight's program. So let's see. I will stop sharing, and I will leave it to Lynn, who is our first presenter. Lynn Landon, thank you so much for presenting. Anything we should know in advance before we get started?
No, I think I'm at about 10 minutes, so hopefully it won't be too tough.
Yeah, that's great. Well, yeah, sweet. Thanks so much. We're ready.
Yeah, all right. So uh, hopefully everyone can see all right.
Yep.
Got this little guy here that likes to get in the way, so I'm going to move it over. All right. So just a quick thing about me. My name is Lynn. Hello. I am from Portland. I was born and raised here. I actually don't live in Portland, but I'm pretty close. And I got my start in IT, technical support, help desk, things like that. I've also worked in software QA. I've been kind of part of, but not necessarily directly involved in the software development cycle for the last many years, 10 or 15 years now, probably. And I discovered technical writing is something that I could actually do about 7 years ago. I had known technical writers in the past, but I didn't exactly know what they do. And once I found out, I thought, oh, that's perfect. That's exactly what I've always loved. So that's how I got into technical writing. So which actually it's really funny talking to other people. It's how a lot of us got into technical writing. We kind of saw how things were not documented, and so we decided to start doing it ourselves. So that's me. I'm going to be talking today a little bit about kind of using AI for good. I don't know how extremely online the folks here are, but recently there's been a lot of big talk about, especially with Studio Ghibli. If you're familiar with it, it's a Japanese animation company that's really, really wonderful, and they do things like My Neighbor Totoro and things like that. But recently, ChatGPT made some really incredible improvements to their code and to their programs, and people were duplifying everything, and it's kind of exhausting. So I wanted to come up with some ideas for things where we are actually using AI for a good reason rather than just because everybody wants an avatar that's cute. So using AI for good in this case, this is how I use it. So this is kind of just a quick run through, but I use it to get help with code. I am familiar with code, but I am not necessarily a coder. So it's really helpful to have my little friend. We also can lessen drudgery. That is a big one. One of the things that we have a lot with technical writing is like, go through and fix 600 lines of something, and it's all kind of copying or find and replace stuff, and it's kind of brain killing. So I try to lessen drudgery a little bit, and I also just want to spend more time actually writing and researching and doing my real job rather than having to kind of come up with things to make it easier for me. So I use AI for that. Let me know if you have any questions. One of the things that I use AI for specific, or pardon me, the kind that I use, I should say, is just ChatGPT 4.0. It's a generative AI, so nothing real special. I do have some prompts that I have it set with. I like it to be friendly. It's nice to have a friendly tone. And I have it kind of set to give me sources. Anytime I ask it for information, I make sure that it's giving me actual sources so I can check them. But if anyone has any questions, feel free, raise your hand. I think I'll see it if you do, but I'm not 100% sure. With that, then.
Have you tested any of the other tools?
I haven't actually. It's funny. I kind of got stuck with ChatGPT and I like it a lot and I use it. My husband does a lot with it too. He's tried Claude and a couple of the others. And I find just kind of from general people talking, ChatGPT seems to be about perfect for what I'm needed for. So I'm not doing a lot of coding or any of the other things like that where I need a really specific thing. I need something that can kind of do research for me and help me do repetitive tasks. So ChatGPT is working really well for me for now, but I will probably try some other ones as time goes by.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So one of the things that I mentioned that I do is I get help with code. So I can look at code. We use at my company, we use a lot of Python, for example. So, and I've used Sphinx before if you have, so you're probably maybe familiar with Python as well. I'm not great at it. I can't really write a lot in it. But I do look at it and kind of understand what it does. So one of the things I use this for is to clear up confusing code. So sometimes if you're working with engineers, especially, you will get a big, either a whole lot of something or nothing. And sometimes it's a whole lot of nothing. But traditionally, it's really nice to be able to say, hey, I got this weird little snippet of code. What do you think it means? Or what might it be? What might it be for? Or how might it be used? And there's one thing that I will say, and this I kind of mentioned, I will probably mention this later as well, but it's really important not to give any of your kind of classified information, anything you wouldn't want floating around on the internet, don't give it to your AI. So I only ever do little snippets or just little bits and bobs that are just really plain code and not in any way identifying. So it's really important to keep in mind anything that you give one of the more traditional web-based AIs, unless you're running it on your own locally, it's definitely possible that it will go elsewhere. So be careful of that. It's helpful if I am looking for things that are in an unfamiliar language. So while I am pretty proficient at looking at Python and saying, yes, I see what they did there, I don't know Go very well, for example, or Rust, or some of the other kind of frequently used things. So it's really helpful for things like that, where I'm not really sure what this might do, and I can pop it in and say, what does this do? And it usually gives me a pretty good summary. It's also great for API questions. I just started doing API documentation. So I've used APIs in the past, but I've never really documented them. And it's interesting that it's very much a whole thing of API documentation. So I can ask API questions. What will this do? How does this work? Does this look okay? Is this formatted correctly? It also helps me make sense of notes. I mentioned that sometimes from your engineers, you get a whole lot of something. Sometimes it's really helpful to say, okay, they're saying this here, but what does this mean? And it's nice. It's like having a second opinion to say, okay, so he said this and I can read it here and it's not making a lot of sense. And then a lot of times the AI will be able to take that and say, well, see, here's this, and this probably refers to this thing. So it's really helpful as I'm learning. So I'm learning a lot about kind of what my company does and what the features are. So that's actually really helpful for me to learn too, because it's, oh, okay, so here's how that connection goes. So it helps me to make those connections as well. Any questions on kind of getting help with code? And again, I am actually sometimes using it to write little Python things because it's pretty good at it, but it's not mostly what I use it for. So any questions there?
One thing
Yeah.
I'm curious about is
Mhm.
just that have you had the ChatGPT or whoever lead you down the wrong path when it comes to an unfamiliar language or code that, or you said engineers notes that
Mhm.
didn't
Yeah,
make
it's
sense to you in the
that's a
beginning, that sort of thing.
yeah. Great question. Yeah, it's funny. I hear a lot. I have, like I said, I have some prompts that I always kind of have going with ChatGPT that it can't lie to me. And you'll ask people and they'll say, oh, it doesn't actually work that way. I don't know, it makes me feel better. It may or may not be, pigeon superstition, but that is one of the things that I kind of keep looking for. So I always have it give me sources whenever there is one. In cases like this, I've actually had really good luck with it. I haven't had it lead me down some weird rabbit hole where it's, doing weird stuff, although I have seen it with other things that I've asked it. But usually it's pretty good at making sense of confusing notes. It's really helpful too in cases where we have engineers who are just in a hurry, which they always seem to be. So they're just kind of they type it up, throw it out, and then you have to hope that you can figure out what they're looking for. So one of the other things it does too is that it can give me a little bit of a bump in that direction. Like, oh, okay, I think he means this. And then you can go back and ask smarter questions as well to the engineer. You can say, hey, I noticed you said this. Is this what you meant? Or was it something like this? And then you can ask better clarifying questions there as well. So you don't have to just say, what is this? What have you sent me? Which sometimes is unavoidable, but I try to avoid it if I can. So yeah, great question. Any other questions? Anything else about kind of getting help with that, clearing things up with code especially? All right. So this is my favorite use of it, to be very honest. I'm a traditionally lazy person. I don't want to have to do find and replace 600 times, even when it's pretty easy to do using a regex or VS Code or a combination. It's still really nice to be able to say, hey, my little robo intern, can you do this for me? So a couple of the things that I've done or had it do is to do things like fixing indentation and formatting. If anyone has ever done work in a YAML file or let me think, JSON or any of that, JavaScript, things like that, you'll know that indentation is incredibly picky. Things like line length in Python. So anything like that where there may be an issue and it's just, there are a lot of errors coming up, you can have it check for you and say, hey, this is a YAML file and I think there's something wrong with the indentation. Can you fix it? And usually, I don't think I've ever had it not come back with a good response. It will usually say, yes, let me reformat that for you. So that's really nice. And that saved me 10, 15 minutes. Just I ask it, 10 seconds later, I have a response, which is really nice. Again, I have not had it lead me wrong. Obviously, that's an easy one to test too, because if it goes in and something breaks, you know it didn't work right. So formatting and indentation is great. It is also great for style. So one of the things I've done with ChatGPT is essentially fed it the Microsoft Style Guide, which is what we use at my company. And I've also, again, that's very important. I have it always give me the source. So which page on the Microsoft Style Guide, for example, it got that information from. So it happens a lot when you switch, especially back and forth, if you have, if you've used Chicago, but now you have to use AP, or if you've used Microsoft, but now you're using Google or something like that, it gets a little confusing, which is pretty normal. So what I like to do is to say, hey, I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to capitalize this, but is that correct? Am I supposed to be capitalizing this? What if it's camel case? And I can ask it that question and it can make a really good response and say, per the Microsoft Style Guide, yes, you should capitalize this, but only if it's, in this case, which is great. So you have to know a little bit, it has to tweak your spidey sense a little bit of saying, I know there's something about the capitalization here that I'm not getting or not remembering, but it's great because it will tell you. And then I have it give me the page that it came from so I can go check just to be safe. And make sure. So that's been really helpful as well. I can ask it if I want it to style something per Microsoft Style Guide. I can have it kind of do a quick run through for me and then check it. Which again, it's that thing where I know how to do that and I could do that, but it takes a lot of time and I am working on other things. So it's really nice to have that little friend to help me out. Same thing with research tasks. So very similar to that. We're looking for a new backend for our docs, and So one of the things I wanted to do was look up kind of what are, I don't know, the top 5 that most folks use. So I had it do that, give me some pricing information. I gave it some of our requirements that we needed, and it went out and did it. And it gave me a nice summary. So I was able to kind of go through, again, sources and see what kind of things I wanted. It's also been really helpful to, specifically today, I've been working on some observability and metrics work, where I would like to know a little bit more about how all the systems fit together. So I've just said, hey, can you kind of give me a quick rundown? Like what should I know? What are the important pieces that are kind of fitting together here, and how do they fit together? And it's been really helpful for learning those things as well. One of the best things that I've done with it too is I have figured out how to make, well, I shouldn't say I figured it out, but I've asked it to and worked enough with it to make some really nice table conversions. So we have giant Python files, and I've had it write a conversion script for me. So it converts directly from Python into a JSON table in a very specific format that readme.com requires. So we've got these really wide tables now that it's very simple to do. It's a matter of 5 or 10 seconds because I've got this little thing. And yes, I could automate that, but I don't know Python that well. So this saves me a huge amount of time. And I learn Python as I'm doing it, which is great.
There's a question
Any
in the
questions there? Yeah. Oh, sorry, hang on.
Yeah, I can read it for you.
Yeah, if you
Yeah,
could read it for me, thanks.
sure. Yeah. The question in the chat is from Jody. Thanks, Jody. It's
Okay.
do you use the GPT paid or the free version? And is there a particular model that you feel gives the best results?
Yeah, I do. I have a like whatever it's $20 a month, basically. It's like I think they call it the Pro or something, or the Pro might be one step up. But yeah, it's $20 a month. For me, it's worth it. I use it a lot, and I am really happy with the results that I get. One of the things I was using 4.0 for a long time, and it actually at one point I think I ran out of tokens because I was asking a lot of questions about a project I was working on, and it just bounces you back. So I'm actually have been using the 3.0 high, I think is what it's called, and it's more built for logical tasks, and it's been great. So I don't know if the version is really important, depending on what you're doing. But for things, what I'm doing a lot is having a kind of look at code and things. The more logical one seems to be working really well for me. Hopefully that helps. Did I answer everything?
Yeah, it seems that way to me, anyways.
Okay. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
welcome.
I have a question.
Go for it.
How do you feed the style guide into it?
So I didn't actually feed it. What I did was I had it go to the website, actually go to Microsoft Style Guide, the online version essentially,
Okay.
and then take a look at it. I asked it to familiarize itself. That was the specific word I used, and that seems to work really well. This is not at all technical writing related, but I also asked it at one point to familiarize itself with accordions because I recently got a new accordion. So it's kind of cool for that. It brings up a lot of stuff. It tells me a lot about, the types of accordions and things like that. So it's kind of fun for a lot of different things. But yeah, I had it familiarize itself with Microsoft Style, and then I asked it to give me its sources. So the source pages whenever it does that. Let me see if there's anything else special that I did with it. One of the things that I do in ChatGPT, and like I said, I haven't used the other ones very much. So you have projects, and you can actually set your prompts per project. So I have a project for Microsoft Style Guide stuff. And that is really helpful because then it doesn't forget. It doesn't forget that, it knows all about Microsoft Style Guide. So that's one of the things that I've found has been really helpful. If you have a project and you tell it all of your terms or requirements at the beginning, it will remember those in that project.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And we've got a question from Lucas in the chat. Thanks,
Yeah.
Lucas. It's what, if any, small drudgery tasks do you still prefer to solve manually? Is there one of these small tasks that you've tried using ChatGPT for but ended up with an underwhelming result?
Yes, in fact, yesterday. So I mentioned a little bit about kind of finding and replacing. So I have had it do some find and replace for me, kind of helping with some regex things that are, really complex kind of regex things. and it's okay at it, but a lot of the times, so for example, I've been working on some key value things that we use in our company to kind of set up Kubernetes configurations, and that's fine. So they're all snake case, so they're all lowercase and snake case with the underlines between, and a lot of times it'll say something like Kafka, for example. So Kafka's in there, and technically Kafka should be capitalized if we're talking about the company, but it shouldn't be capitalized if it's part of that all lowercase snake case thing. So doing that manually is something I still do because it can't really figure that out. And that's okay. That's just one of those things that, that's a drudgery that I continue to do, and it's not that bad. And I still mess it up sometimes, but for the most part, yeah, things like that sometimes don't work. I'm trying to think what else. There was something a few months back that was really frustrating because I just couldn't quite get it. I couldn't quite get it to work right. So yes, there are definitely some things that the AI simply won't be able to do very well. But that's okay. Again, for the things that it does do well, it's saving me a ton of time. So I don't mind having to do some of it myself. Hopefully that answers your question all right. All right. Any other questions there? Good ones so far. I love it. You're welcome. All right. So I like to ask questions. And I also feel really bad about asking my coworkers questions or my peers questions, because a lot of the times it's like I'm just kind of hammering them. At least that's how it feels. And it feels very burdensome and very much like an imposition. And I hate that. So this is great because you can ask all the questions you want, unless it bumps you down a tier. And even then it's fine. But you can ask all the questions you want and it does not judge you, which is really nice, especially when you're trying to learn something new. So you can say, hey, what does this thing do? What does this mean? How does it work? Who uses this? And I love who uses this, especially because one of the things I've been working on, as I mentioned, is observability and metrics and dashboards and things like that. And I think, who's using these primarily? Who's gonna care about this type of a dashboard, or who's going to care about what this metric exposes, for example? And it's nice because it can kind of go out and give you a brief summary of sort of a user profile, if you will. Who uses these? Oh, SREs mostly, or it could be engineers are using these, or this is very much an end user thing. It's very nice for that. I really like that we're able to get a little bit of flavor there, if you will, about who may be using these products or these functions. What does it do? Again, this is similar to what I talked about earlier with having it kind of help me code or look at code, I should say. It's like there's a snippet of code and I kind of get what it's doing, but what does it really do? And what is it interacting with? It can be really helpful, especially if you are trying to document what that thing does. Again, what does it mean if you get a confusing note from someone? If you kind of get what the thing is, but you're not 100% sure, sometimes you can ask it to summarize a thing and it can tell you. And sometimes even just that, it's kind of flipping a switch a little bit for me, at least. And oh, okay, just hearing it explained a different way sometimes can just flips, and then yeah, okay, I got that. Yes, understood. So that can be really helpful, just asking a lot of questions. And like I said, there's no judgment. So it never gets tired of hearing you ask questions, which is great. So any questions on the question? All right. So I've mentioned a little bit, this is how I use it primarily. So I use it to fix things, like I mentioned, things like indentation in YAML files and as well as doing things like table conversions for me, or making a ridiculous, we had something like a 1,400 line thing in text. I think it was a plain text thing, and I had it make it into an actually very nice looking markdown table for me, for example. It's like that. It's really good for that. I ask a lot of questions. It's really helpful. It doesn't feel judgy, which is nice. I can also check my style. So as I mentioned, it's really great for me to say, hey, is this supposed to be camel cased? Right, okay, great. And then it can tell me yes or no, and I can move on with my day. And that took me 10 seconds, which is fantastic. It also helps me with words. So that sounds funny. I write for a living, right? But we've all had a point where you're just that it's just hovering like right back here somewhere and you can't think of the right word. And every word except that is coming to your head, coming forth like, oh, it's this. No, it's not aardvark. Stop bringing aardvark up. But it's really helpful if you want to think of another way to say something. So maybe there's a way of, maybe you're saying something and you're not really like it. It's not quite right. And you can say, hey, I'm trying to say this. What's another way I could say that? And it can give you some options. And even if you hate all of the options, sometimes that can jog that little block loose. And then you have a bit more, oh, okay, yeah, this isn't really good, but if I added this or changed this, then it would be really great. So I find it really helpful to kind of move the blocks out of the way a little bit when they happen. That is mostly how I use it. Any questions on those things or any of the other things I may be using or how I'm using them?
This is David. I just want to say that is how I
Yeah,
use ChatGPT a lot is
yeah,
if I get stuck on a word or a phrase or I keep repeating it multiple times, I'm getting stuck in a loop.
yep.
Yeah, I find it very, very helpful for that.
Yeah, it's wild. You wouldn't think that it would be that useful, but it is. It's really like it just kind of jogs everything a little bit and refreshes your brain a little bit, I think. So I really like that aspect of it. It makes things a lot easier for me to again, it's a time saving thing. If I don't have to sit and go in circles in my head for 10 minutes, that's great. So that's giving
Yeah,
me
yeah.
more time to actually get the words out, but it is really helpful. That's cool. I'm glad somebody else does it the same thing. So there are downsides. I've mentioned them a little bit. Privacy is one of the biggest. Again, if you are using a web-based AI of any kind, no matter how nice they seem to be or how much they talk about security, your stuff is probably not private. So one of the things you can do for that, of course, is you can set up and run your own local AI. There are some really cool things that you can do with that, but it is a lot of work, which is part of why I use ChatGPT because I don't give it anything I wouldn't want someone to know on the internet. So it doesn't know my name, it doesn't know where I work. I never give it code that's important or personal or any of that kind of thing. And it's fine, but it's very important to keep that in mind when you're working. We've had, I know some other companies as well have had issues where people just were throwing stuff into ChatGPT willy-nilly. I think there was some talk of, Disney or somebody, some big company. They were just putting everything in there and secret stuff and things like that. So don't do that. Um, just keep it in mind. The AI lies. I hate saying it like that. It sounds mean. It's not meant to be that way. But the AI is these kinds of AIs are primarily programmed to give you an answer. It doesn't have to be a true answer. It just has to be an answer. So think of it like a really trying way too hard customer service person who just wants to tell you something, anything, even if it's not true. Yes, the manager's coming. The manager is not coming. That sort of a thing. So it's going to try very hard. You can ask it not to lie to you. One of the things you can do as well as I've mentioned several times, is to ask it for sources. Anytime you get an answer from it, just be sure, or you can tell it as a prompt initially in your project to say, hey, if you ever give me information, I need sources. So tell me what website it came from, or what peer-reviewed thing, or whatever it may be. Okay, thanks. Almost done, promise. Sorry, I really thought it was going to be 10 minutes. All
Oh, no
right.
problem at all. I know how that goes. Yeah.
All right. Also, the environment. AI is rough on the environment. We've probably heard a lot about it. My husband jokes, yeah, every time you ask it a really important question, 6 trees burned down, that kind of a thing. It's not quite that intense, but there is definitely something to be said for that. And it's important for you as you're looking into AIs that you like and want to use, kind of what their policy is and if it meets up with yours. The other thing, and kind of the last thing, is that AI is everywhere, and whether it's good or not, I don't really know. I feel like it's like any other kind of fad. It's everywhere, but it doesn't really need to be. I feel like one of the important things that we can do as technical writers, that we have to do often as technical writers, is adapt. We have to adapt because it's here. No amount of being upset about it is gonna get rid of it. So instead, if we can learn to work with it, if we can use it in ways that are positive rather than giblifying everything, for example, I think that's a good start for us. Last thing, just kind of suggestions, find an AI you like, learn about the pitfalls and benefits that each AI has. Again, everyone's going to use this a little differently. So Claude may be perfect for you, or one of the others may be perfect for you, and that's great. Try something new, give it a shot. I need to do that myself and take my own advice. But really the thing is to keep at it. So if you're feeling frustrated, try different prompts, ask somebody else, and this is fun too, ask the AI. If you're saying, hey, I'm having trouble communicating this to you, what do you think I should try? It's funny, but it works. It's weird. And it's, I don't know, it feels very funny to ask the AI how to fix the AI, but it does help sometimes. And I believe that's it for me. Any questions, anything else? I'm happy to answer, or if you want, I can just answer you in the chat, but I will stop sharing for now. As soon as I figure out how, there we go.
I would, on the subject of privacy, there's a hidden setting in ChatGPT to tell it to not train on your conversation.
Gotcha. Yeah, that is a very good point. There are a lot of places you'll see that as well. I know LinkedIn, I think, was doing something like that. There are quite a few that have kind of slipped those sorts of things to use your information for training. So it's a good idea to look for that everywhere. But yeah, thank you. That's a really good point.
I hadn't heard of that. Yeah, thanks for that, Scott.
All
Great.
right.
Well, Lynn, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That was, yeah, that was fantastic. I was taking notes, definitely giving me a lot to think about there.
Sure.
Next on our list of presenters, Michelle. Thank you again so much for presenting to us tonight. I'll let you share your screen and we can get
Okay,
started.
sure.
Sound good? Okay. Or I guess you
Yes.
can go ahead and share your
So
screen.
my goal is to kind of show a different way of looking at your documentation. It's going to be your most valuable data asset. I'm going to explain why that is, why it's critical. Interrupt me by any questions you want to. Why does this need some sort of governance to it? What is data governance and the tech writer in data governance? So why is documentation critical data for AI? So think about it for a minute. Every document you create is shared data, and that's where its power lies. What do I mean by that? Well, in the old days, before AI, we just produced content and readers or other consumers would click on the link and get the information they need to know, and maybe they might leave a feedback about that or a question or so. But now, it's now data. This is a screenshot from my AI program. It's an AI word processor named Lex, and these are all the different prompts I have for it. So after AI, not only is it something that communicates, but we now can prompt it with AI content and assess the AI recommendations. And also it's going to be used to generate new content. If we look further into this content, what we see is that I copied a style guide into the context tag, and I actually save it and attach it to my document. So as I'm going on along with my writing, the AI, which is actually Claude in the background, is telling me what styles and such I need to know. So why does this data need governance? Well, when you think about data quality, any style guide you have needs to be accurate, and AI only can work with the data it has. If it's not accurate, if you get the wrong capitalization or the wrong terminology, it's not going to really work. Also, is it relevant? This style guide's from 2015. Now there's going to be a newer one, but maybe you need to get the next version before you provide it to the AI assistant, or else you're going to be stuck. The other thing, it's complete because does it have all the terms? Does it have all the different ways it could all the different ways to be capitalized or the different kinds of ways to use different terms. The other thing is it valid? What are other people writing in the ether there? Are they using lowercase data quality, or are they using different terms different ways? So that's a big issue now. And then the other thing is I cannot answer these questions all by myself, because now my data is being shared by everybody in the team, or at least with my teammates. And this documentation that I put in, used as a prompt, could be morphed into other content. So someone could use it as a presentation, or they could be generating a web page with it, or doing a podcast, because there's so many different other AI apps out there, and everybody has their project. And I want to be able to facilitate some of that, because they need to have, I want to make sure that people are able to use content and get what they need. So it needs to be, my content needs to be accessible to them as they need it. However, I need to make sure that it's private too, because like now, that, like, I don't want to put a subject matter expert name, probably for first and last name in my AI, because that might be and identify them with a particular expertise, because now I'm kind of getting into the area of personal information. So that might be an area that I need to be really sensitive to. And this all leads to enablement of AI readiness. So what I mean by that is we need to know the story of the data, story of the documentation data. Where did that data come from? Just to get in the documentation, how that documentation data has been transformed, or understand a bit about that. And then when it goes into the AI, yes, something happens. And then what happens after, what the output is. We need to be able to validate, evaluate different kinds of AI decisions, and basically ensure that it's ethical, that we don't have too much biases, that we're not amplifying opinions or going out of context from our original documentation, or our intent. We have to make sure that's compliant. There's lots of different laws, and Oregon has not only a data law at this point, but it's looking at some AI laws, and transparent, so that people know why and how we use the AI. So now, what is data governance? When we talk about data governance, it's not just a one-off monthly thing. It's a continuous program. It is something that helps the business and meets the business needs to help the data work for the business, essentially, and align its needs. So these three possibilities, these could be different goals. And say I want to get customer insight. Well, now I need to make sure that my data activities and everything that leads up to that data is going to help with that particular goal. And that's what the data governance helps with. And it describes the how through a roadmap, which could be like explains kind of the roles and technology and the processes, which we see in the next slide. So these are different components that need to be coordinated with data governance. When I'm just telling you that there's a lot of pieces in the puzzle and why it's important to get involved. One is roles. There's data owner, somebody who just has the data on their hard drive or whatnot, or their documentation data. Another's data steward. They manage and they oversee the data to make sure that it's good quality. Processes, those are examples, are determining critical data to govern, or to manage the metadata, which is how it describes the documentation and how people find it and use it for prompting. Now we have technologies, those are data catalog, the online data set inventory, and platforms that sort of automate governance tasks like data quality cleaning and such. in addition to all these different components, we have different foci, foci on governance. We have a sort of executive level where there are senior managers that assess the program needs. They secure the funding, and they sort of are the ones that are the final person that takes responsibility for everything. Then there's sort of a tactical level, and that is sort of cross-functional teams that meet together that determine what kind of terminology they want to use. They come to some sort of agreement, and they help translate this business strategy into action in the data world. Then we have the operational piece of things, which are nuts and bolts of data. They happen each and every day, like entering data or doing the documentation or doing some edits or changes. And then there's support that might be marketing for data governance, such as educating other people across the team, maybe doing some IT help, making sure that that people have access to a data governance tool or know how to use it. So there's many different kind of focuses within these roles, processes, and technologies. Okay, the tech writer and data governance. So it's important, I think, to align with a data governance lead or executive. I see a lot of positions out there where they want a tech writer to come up with a final say of a terminology or to meet, essentially to be the data governance lead. And it's a very different skill set than I think for most technical writers, because it requires sort of certification and has a lot of people skills, a lot of managerial aspect to it. It could be a full-time job on itself. But I see the technical writer as basically being the one that helps support data governance needs, but also collaborates and shares their expertise. And it's a very important expertise on how to manage this metadata, how we're talking about documentation, and understanding data content and needs across the team. So if we look at data quality and in this governance land, as I said, technical writers need to recommend ways to standardize the metadata. That is, if you're talking about documentation one way and another person across the a different team talks about documentation a different way, and their customers mean something different, then you're going to be stuck. You need to kind of have some really critical understanding and consistency among that metadata. Steward document data is another important part to make sure that qualities and versioning is correct, and to provide authority on terminology and standards, so that when people are talking about the document, not only the documentation, but the concepts that are transversing throughout the organization, that there's some sort of shared understanding. Also, there's the accessibility piece, and that's, again, making sure that there's the right metadata for people to find that information. Understanding and following business privacy protections, because now you have to be compliant, given that your stuff could be used as in the AI world. And advise company on AI usage of documentation. You need to be able to say, okay, well, this part is okay to use for a prompt or to use for this particular project. Kind of be in the loop on that. And especially to explain what data AI uses and why and how, and to know which AI tools have been used and how. So this is the explainability of how your documentation got from point A to through the AI engine and the output. And I think, even if possible, to spot check how people are using it. Basically, does the information make sense? Is your original documentation, is it being used through AI? Is it is the data that it's receiving, is it being used for a good purpose, what biases exist. So in summary, documentation is also a data source for AI, and that is a big changer. And now that we're talking about it as a data source, not just a communication tool, documentation needs data governance. Technical writers need to invest in data governance because now their document is, they need to be aware of how their content's being used and where it goes. And that, again, I think that as far as being in charge of the lay of the land of data governance, the leaders or the executives kind of remain in charge, where the tech writers give their advice. Now, if they want the tech writer to take charge, then I believe that the salary should become commensurate with that, because that is, again, a very different ballpark. So here's some resources if you want to learn more. There's Dataversity, and that's a great place just to learn about data. I write a lot for them, data governance and AI governance, and all these different pieces of data quality and standardization. There's the Owlery, which gives helpful and actionable advice in producing knowledge-based documentation. The Write the Docs community has, I don't know if you know, the Slack channel has like a AI channel, and there's some good places to chat about best practices. And then we have the AI Portland group, which is pretty new. And people from all across different industries are learning about the latest innovations of AI and how they use it. They have different networking events and also different kinds of speakers. So it's pretty fascinating. Feel free to ask me any questions, comment, or feedback. Do you have any questions?
I had a question that came up. Can you hear me? Is my mic on?
Yes, I can hear
Okay,
you.
cool. Just between your presentation and Lynn's, it seems to me like maybe an engineer should know how AI works, and people, kind of in this space of documentation, maybe people who are more focused on the language aspect of working life should know how to use AI. So it's like the engineer knows how it works, and the documentarian, for lack of a better term, knows how to use it. And just to your point a few slides ago, Michelle, about kind of checking in on how people are using it and make sure that people are following best practices. Do you think that this distinction I'm making, do you think it could be true? It's something that just came to mind, but what do you think about that?
I think that those can be very central to their roles, but I think at the same time, even though the engineer or whoever's using it should know the AI, I think I'm a practical person. I think of the end results, and at the end of the day, when you're a technical writer, you're presenting some sort of knowledge to that person, and now you're presenting it to AI, and I think you need to not know every single thing about it, but I think to some degree, if you're a steward of that document and you're responsible for that data, then you better know where that data is going and how it's being used. I mean, just a very basic, I mean, I think there's a lot of things we're trying to sort out, but because somebody can point it back to you. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and it's almost like we don't get off so easy. We really do need to know how these systems work and where the data or content or kind of whatever you call it, where that goes, how it's used, that sort of thing.
Yeah, to a basic degree for your particular documentation for what you are a steward of.
Hmm.
And basically to talk with other people across different departments and who are using it, so that you're all on the same page as to how it's being used. Being aware that now you're not only using it just to get, information on how to run a particular program, but they could be using it to feed into AI to do whatever, and being able to guide on that, because you might be responsible.
Yeah, that makes sense, and it's given me something to think about for sure. That there are just so many different user personas with regard to AI. There's Oh, the 20-minute alarm was just going off. There's, yeah, that engineer user, there's the end user, the writer, the steward of the documentation, all
Hmm.
of that stuff. I hadn't really thought of it quite like that.
Yeah.
So
Eh,
thank you so much.
And then there's all different kinds of tools. I mean, right now,
Oh yeah.
this presentation is Gamma, and that's a different AI documentation tool.
So
Um,
you created your presentation in something called Gamma, is that right?
yes.
I've never heard of that.
It is a presentation tool that has generative AI that allows you to it can help you take your thing from scratch and um do the whole entire presentation. Mainly I used it for the screenshots. So all of these, for example, this is all AI generated. I prompted that. I prompted this. Um, it prompted that. These are not pictures that are out there. Basically, the AI was helping me also simplify some of my language and my bullet points and such. So, but I could take, the knowledge, the example I used and put it into, Gamma or whatnot.
Nice, thank
Basically,
you.
okay, cool. I hope that gives you some new things to think about.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michelle. That was, yeah, fantastic. And looks like Scott's up next. Scott's going to be, so Scott, I met Scott at the end of an earlier Write the Docs PDX event that we did with PSU about AI, and Scott showed me something he was working on, and then I bugged him and I said, "Hey Scott, will you please come talk to us again and show everybody what you got?" And I think that was one piece of wanting to do this show and tell tonight. So yeah, I'll hand it over to Scott, and yeah, thanks,
Thank you.
Scott.
Thank you. And Lynn, my question was going to be what other AI tools you use. And I think you answered that. All right.
Yeah, I'm honestly kind of limited, and it's not on purpose. It's just one of those things where kind of what I started with works pretty well for me, but I do want to try out some new things. So
Okay. Awesome. All right. Okay. We shared, right? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So Doc Buddy is a project that came out of a need. The genesis of Doc Buddy is not the healthy normal project that that people would like to work on. It's the unhealthy project. It's the legacy code. Specifically for this use case, it was COBOL. Now you probably wonder who's using COBOL, because who's using COBOL? It was old when I was in high school. It was a joke at the time. But we do use it actually. We all use it actually all the time. We use it in ATMs. Virtually every single ATM, 95% of ATMs use COBOL. There's a COBOL interaction whenever you do this. And sometimes the screen is actually generated by COBOL. If you see some ugly text, that may be text coming directly from COBOL. Now, why Why? Why do we still do this? It's bad because the devs are all gone. You can't ask them how this documentation works. The software, these collections of softwares, banks merge. They merge together, and when they do, they may not replace the old systems. They may just run them all, or run some combination of them. Some get replaced and some don't. The language itself is, the way COBOL works is it's very old school. So the business logic and the code are inseparable. There's not even function calling in COBOL. It's maybe there's some function calling, but I'm not an expert on COBOL, but it is not great. There's like a lot of go-tos, like BASIC from the 80s. Now it's also archaic in ways that make it hard to merge away from it, because it doesn't use ASCII, it doesn't use Unicode, it uses EBCDIC, which is a very old way of encoding characters, and fixed length strings and all kinds of stuff that it's really hard to write an equivalent piece of software with today's tools. But still, it works. It processes vast amounts of data, and businesses have built themselves around it. The features of a product they bought in the 90s are the shape of the bank. And the biggest reason why nobody leaves it is because of the consequences of screwing it up. All right, what could go wrong if a bank messes up a migration off of COBOL, or just they make changes to a legacy COBOL code base? I don't know if you guys remember this, but in the fall of last year, someone noticed that Chase Bank ATMs stopped checking, or I say they stopped blocking withdrawals on a check you wrote to yourself. So you could write a $50,000 check, and as long as you wanted to sit there and withdraw stacks of hundreds from the ATM, you could do it. And it went viral on TikTok, and they are still trying to recover the money. So there are people I know who are trying to work with old code, and the starting point, well, I wrote DocBuddy for this point, but the starting point for documenting code is you open up your chatbot and you say, can you document this code for me? And you paste in some code. And ChatGPT will give you pretty good answers right off the bat. It'll works on almost any coding language. And you're okay, all right? But the problem with this approach is, what if you're dealing with a large code base? What if you're dealing with hundreds of files? Well, as it turns out, we can automate AI. All the AI providers, they give you a chatbot, of course, but also they give you an API, and that is just a HTTP endpoint that you can programmatically send a query to and get a response. You could even use these tools to implement your own chatbots, if that's what you want. So DocBuddy is this. It is just a shell that works around your code and documents each file. Now, we've entered a very strange period as a software developer. It was never the case that you would have to like talk and negotiate with a computer. Coding in the past has always been very, very brainy, very or let's just say very logical. There's a certain kind of intelligence. But now we're in a place where you have to cajole the computer. You have to negotiate. You have to sort of convince it. So this is the actual prompt that we get in that we use in DocBuddy by default, although it's changeable. And the goal is that a documentarian could write a better prompt and get different results. But the base prompt is here. As you can see, you are a top tier software developer. Oh, there's a typo in there. Fortunately, ChatGPT and other AIs, they don't care. Well, they might care a little. And we put in there the document tree. I'll just say a representation of all the files. And we also inform it that it's allowed to use functions to ask us for additional files. And occasionally, if you ask it to document file such and such, it will respond with, I would like to look at these other files before I document that file. And then you just give it the name of the file and the contents of the file, and it goes on its way. So I'm going to demo DocBuddy. Are there any questions before I start that? Can't see the chat.
A question just kind of came up in my mind. You know, you said it used to be maybe just more cut and dried as you're trying to get a computer to do something, and now you find yourself kind of negotiating with the computer. As I mean, your role is you would say you're a software developer. Is that
I
right?
am, yeah.
Yeah. So as a software developer, does that feel good? Does it feel bad? Does it? How does that? What do you think?
Well, I am someone that tries to. I had a very bad job interview in the late 2000s, and after that, I decided I was never going to be last to a trend. And so I've kind of taken that to heart. And so for several years, I've been trying to get my head around this. But I will tell you, software developers, as a rule, hate this. They do not want to change. They do not want to deal with the lack of determination of AI is actually deterministic. If you give it the exact same query, it will give you the exact same answer. But as implemented for most users, it seems random. And if you as a user ask ChatGPT the same question twice in 2 different sessions, you'll get different answers. And this is poisonous to many developers. Okay.
Is it the lack of repeatability that drives you crazy then? The whole like it's not scientific anymore. It's hard to
Yeah, it is. It feels unpredictable. And I think many developers,
Oh.
I think we're all a little bit on the spectrum. Can't tolerate it.
High five, buddy.
All right. So I just this is a project in GitHub. It is not really a very nicely finished piece of software. It is, but it is sort of a demonstration of what's coming, I think. Okay, so I've just cloned it from GitHub. The next step is to configure it. I have to. Okay, I have a .end file ready to go. This is what holds your secrets. I will look at the distribution end file. So there are multiple different AI products supported. There's Google's Vertex AI. Most people use ChatGPT from OpenAI, but also we support, I support Olama, which is the local execution. But let's get out of here. This is covered in the documentation for DocBuddy. I'll pull it up real quick. We just show this is the actual DocBuddy. This is zoom in a little. It's on GitHub. It's free to download. Okay, so I have downloaded DocBuddy, and you can see it here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use DocBuddy to document itself. So I have a command line ready to go. We're going to just look at all the files in this folder. We're going to write the documentation to a folder called generated docs. We're going to limit it to py files. That's the Python files. And I'm going to do a dry run first. There it is. And now I will show you it actually running. There it goes, chugging away. Now it takes about 15 seconds per file, which is not real quick. But you know, like any good chef, I have a lasagna already cooked to show you.
And so at this point, it's sending those files to OpenAI and it's processing them in order to describe them and then deliver them back to your computer. Is that what's happening?
That's correct. Yeah, it's
Cool.
sending each one. It's wrapping them in the prompt I showed earlier. With you know, a lot of cajoling. You're an expert documentarian, et cetera, et cetera. And we're getting a response back from OpenAI, and I will click on main. Okay. And I can bump it up a little. So this is a documentation file for the entry point of DocBuddy. We're also adding in the actual code and just wrapping it up in, you know, some useful documentation. And it's worth noting it's kicking it out in Markdown, which, you know, when I started showing this to people, I was surprised by how many people did not know what Markdown is. It is just a plain text format. Actually, I'll show you what Markdown looks like. So this is the two files side by side. Markdown is a text format where we take the ways that we used to write documentation by hand in text files, and we formalize it so that it can be rendered into HTML.
So it takes care of the formatting and the styling.
Well, it's a very simple formatting system. You can actually add HTML as well.
Oh, cool.
And you know, there's a couple of BR tags there. But yeah, that's the whole thing.
Very cool. So have you used this with the COBOL system?
Yes, there are some in my professional life. This is being used to sort of provide first pass documentation on legacy systems. And at the moment, it's not a very productized tool. These are still early days. I would like to do a lot more with it. I'm not sure if it's going to happen, but in my perfect world, I would turn this into a consumer usable app, an actual program you can run on your computer, probably via Electron.
Very cool. So Lynn, to your presentation about, having a smart intern or something, would a tool like this help you in your specific work, or um would it be overkill, or what do you think?
It might be kind of helpful. I think a lot of it depends on kind of what you're talking about. All of our stuff is pretty new. Our company is a startup, so fortunately, we're not using COBOL. But oh, 5 1/4 inch floppies for us. But yeah, there are definitely, so it started out like many startups do, where it was one person, like we had one technical writer, and he was obviously swamped and he quit. And then they brought in some other folks. And so a lot of what we have to look at right now is there's so much wrong with things like style and weird fluffy language. And then we have a bunch of APIs that have been put in that no one knows what they do. I have something like 1,800 observability metrics that I need to go through and just try to figure out what they do. And something like this would probably be amazing for that. I've actually been using it, just my chat GPT for that a little bit, as in saying, okay, if you look at the title of this, does this look like a histogram? Is this a histogram? Okay, great. Now I can identify histograms really well. So that's great. But things like that. Yeah, that would be super helpful.
Well, it's open source. It's just a little Python script, or a group of Python scripts. You can download it and try it out.
Nice. It's really cool.
And maybe the lesson here is that it's actually really easy to script AI. You can bring it to bear whatever you want if you just if you use AI to write a Python script to use AI.
Do you need
Yes.
the paid version of ChatGPT to
Oh, yeah, sorry, I
communicate?
anticipated this question. The API version of ChatGPT is billed by the word. So to generate this, I generated this collection earlier today. I spent 18 cents. Yeah. And I think actually Google Gemini is a bit cheaper, or maybe a lot cheaper, and about the same quality. Yeah.
Good to know. I've wondered if I could, kind of crack this nut at some point, because it looks really interesting. If I were to go to your GitHub repository and start that process, I would need to set up my own API key, or whatever
You
would.
would need to set up yes, you would need to set up an OpenAI or Gemini account or Claude account. Oh, I think Claude is compatible, although I haven't tested it. And you would need to, yeah, you need to get an API key, and you need to configure it in the .env file. And for me, mostly it's been pretty flawless from there. There are things, like rate limits and stuff that you can run into. You'd have to really work at it to do that.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, this is fantastic, and even just knowing that it's replacing, or augmenting the work of a technical writer, I still think it's just so cool, and it looks really fun to play
I
with,
mean, for what is being brought to bear right now, it is below the level of a technical writer. It's for things that are wholly undocumented and won't be. And I think this is ultimately a tool that will be used by technical writers. This or similar will be used by technical writers to do more. I don't think it's a replacement.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. There's a question in the chat from Jody. If you feel GPT-4 is better, or if it's worth going into the developer version of any of these tools, I would guess, versus the free version. If you have a comment on that.
Oh, I haven't used the free version for a couple of years, but my understanding is that uh, I believe that you only get I think you get 4.0 on free now, and you're limited only in terms of the number of questions you can ask. So the base very good model is 4.0, which is ChatGPT 4, and then lowercase o. It's not a 0. But there are more models beyond that. There are models that do thinking, where they don't show you how it works on ChatGPT, but if you look at other models like DeepSeek R1, they do expose the thinking process. And what happens is it sits there and has almost an internal monologue where it talks to itself about how to answer the question, and then at the end of a process emits an answer. And those models do give better results, but probably this is good enough. Your mileage may vary. You might need to try it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't heard of DeepSeek or anything like that having the same kind of capability that you've shown us here, but I'm also not very up to date on
Oh,
that.
oh, well, yeah, you could use DeepSeek for this. I mean,
Oh, you could?
you would set up Olama, which is the
Oh,
local AI running tool, and just configure the .n file to visit DeepSeek on your local machine.
okay.
Or presumably DeepSeek also offers an API, but I haven't looked into that.
Yeah, same. Wow. That was fantastic, Scott. Thank you so much for the presentation. And everybody, Lynn and Michelle, thank you so much. I'm so glad we have this recorded, just as a way to share it with everybody, because I think we kind of identified, like I was saying earlier, these different kind of user personas, different roles that we take on when we're interacting with AI. I feel like we've just covered a lot of ground on that. So thank you all very much for that. Really great stuff. Um, I'll just kind of quickly share real quick. We're about at the end of our call. Let's see, I'm sharing my screen once more. Um, just to kind of round this off at the end, earlier I mentioned, I am sharing my screen, right? Okay, yeah. Um, just any announcements or requests. And I made some announcements just about these upcoming meetings at PSU. I put those links in the chat in case you didn't see. Does anybody else have any sort of announcement they'd like to make? And if not, that's totally fine. Any requests?
Don't have a request, but if you can make it to the Write the Docs conference in May, it is so good. It's so worthwhile. It's so filled with awesome people. It's really, really worth going. So if money is an issue, they have some grants. They also have, I think, which I used last year when I was unemployed, they have like $100 version. So don't let the price of the tickets scare you. They do have assistance and things like that. So it's super worth going if you can go.
Totally. Thank you so much for mentioning that, Lynn. I that slipped my mind, but I've definitely used the opportunity grant before as well, and it was really helpful. And I made connections with people that I still talk to, and who I like very much, and who have taught me a lot of things. And check out this segue, and who I'm connected to on LinkedIn. Um, I just got to find the chat, and then I'm going to drop my LinkedIn in the chat. Gosh, where's the chat? I think it's because I'm sharing my screen. Ah, here we go. If you have your LinkedIn and you want to throw it in the chat, you're welcome to do that. And if not, that's fine too. But yeah, just it's the Write the Docs conference is just a fantastic opportunity to meet people, to absorb information, to share knowledge, like we've been doing tonight. And I really do feel uh, like I've learned a lot tonight in this conversation. So thanks, Michelle, for tossing that in there. And so the thank you, Lynn. So the Write the Docs meetup is what, like May? I put it in the chat.
Fourth,
Uh,
second through the
early, yeah,
fifth,
fourth
or
through the
something
seventh.
like that.
Yeah, it's in
Yeah,
the
there you go.
chat. It's yeah, May 4th through 6th. So no Write the Docs PDX meetup next month. Keep your ears peeled for June. Something in the summer. I've heard rumors of pizza money that might be coming our way. Don't quote me on that, but we might have some snacks of some kind. That's pretty exciting. Um, and I guess with that, I'll hope to see you all around and definitely be in touch. If you'd like to reach out and connect, and thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. Bye.
Thanks for hosting.
Yeah, nice to meet you, everybody.
Nice to meet you.